the topic that we're going to talk through today, I felt like was a good transition from talking about quarantine and the pandemic and all of that into FOMO. I don't know if everybody knows what that means. I was talking with Jacob and he said, it's maybe more of a millennial, like kind of word, but FOMO means the fear of missing out. So Jacob, I would love it if we could talk through that. Is that a real fear? How do you deal with that? I know a lot of people who have FOMO,
Yeah, absolutely. FOMO is a real thing. It's definitely a real experience, but it's interesting. FOMO has changed. Well, this pandemic has changed a lot. Let's even change how we experience FOMO, right? In some ways, like there are more ways to get connected. That sounds kind of weird, but for example, there's some really cool research done at the University of Virginia, and so what they were actually studying FOMO, which is once again
all right,
which is really cool, which is really interesting. I think it's a timely piece of research as well. But
I was gonna say, if it is kind of a millennial, kind of later generations term, then now's a good time to maybe know what we're talking about.
Yeah. So some things that they're learning is that even though it seems like everything is closed or canceled, but FOMO regardless is still there. But this FOMO is now more towards this digital experience that we really can't be a part of. And this is because either we're tired, we're busy, we're overwhelmed, we're being kind of inundated by these digital alternatives, these digital experiences. For example, I'm sure we've all, well, not all, but I'm sure we may have seen some advertisement or some link like Instagram live workouts or even online cooking classes. So the research is showing there's this increase of FOMO because there's a lot that they need to catch up on online, but they're unable to, which I thought was an interesting kind of spin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think before this year, we would have classified FOMO as, not going to a party or not meeting up with friends at the store or the mall or whatever it is. Like
Right.
I think we used to classify it more as in-person interactions. And you're so right that through this pandemic, it's kind of shifted to be a lot more digital interactions. And
which is I thought was pretty interesting just in general, but I think you're absolutely right. I don't want to miss those parts as well, and being like seeing people, like being able to connect with people. I believe God has allowed us to be social creatures. He wants us to be in union. Like we see that through Scripture. We see that all through Acts, all through the letters. We're meant to be in a community. We're meant to spend time with each other, and there's nothing like spending that time with each other when you can see someone's eyes, when you can just kind of see and hear like what's going on in their heart, their experiences, and spending time with people, creating new memories. Those memories are important. Like memories are incredibly important to us. So when we're not able to connect with people, we're not able to have those memories. It's hard. It's really sad. It's really sad. So even stepping back to what I shared earlier, like even with my family, kind of seeing my daughter grow up through a phone, like I know there's that sadness, there's that FOMO there, just because there's that distance, there's not being able to be there and experience that all together.
I think it's really interesting that I think before I asked that question, I was thinking, well, FOMO's probably not a big deal right now because there's not a lot going on, but it makes sense that it would actually be even more intense and heavy now.
Yeah. I guess there's a researcher who used to say there's a paradox of choice. The more opportunities, the more choices we have, the harder it feels for us, which is also pretty interesting as well. But yeah, so there are so many different opportunities, for us. Like I mentioned earlier, that on Facebook, Instagram, social media is still going to be a huge piece of FOMO for sure.
Right, and it's just ever shifting and changing.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. constantly being bombarded or inundated by all these experiences that we don't get to have or we don't have time for. It's just really tough.
Right. Yeah, no, that's so true. So what, practical tips would you give someone who is or has struggled with FOMO, the fear of missing out?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. So I do think there are probably a couple of things that we could do, and this list is not necessarily exhaustive or anything like that, but something that really quickly comes to my mind is how much are we engaging with social media? How much are we engaging with kind of those things that we're missing out on? Because if we're
Right.
constantly being bombarded, maybe we need to kind of think about how do we redirect this just a little bit.
I was gonna
Like,
say, would you kind of suggest like hopping off for a minute and just sort of
yeah,
refreshing?
yeah. I, I think that's a really good point of kind of asking yourself, do I need to hop off? But being on media mindfully. Like let's
Yeah.
not only just with the
Mindful
time,
media use.
mindful media. There is a term. Let's coin that. But mindful
That's
media
awesome.
use.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. I know that I'm thinking specifically of when the pandemic started back in March. I started to get really overwhelmed, not necessarily with feelings of FOMO, but just
Mm,
feelings of anxiety and overwhelmed by all of the different opinions and thoughts and fears and all of these things I was seeing online. And I started just putting my phone away like 2 hours before I went to
yeah,
bed, keeping it in a different room, kind of getting off social media for a week
yeah,
because my soul, my mind needed that break to be able
yeah,
to just sort of refocus and have that mindfulness.
yeah. Absolutely. I think that's well. Kudos to you, Tori.
Thanks. Thank
Kudos
you.
to you.
It was difficult the first like day, but then I was like, wow, I feel so much better
Yeah,
being off of this, even though like that's
yeah.
you think that that would be better for me, you'd think
Right,
I would feel better to know everything going on and know, be
right.
communicating with everyone that way, but in reality it was making me more anxious.
Yeah, yeah. Just gathering more and more information. That that is not always the most helpful.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily pin down certainty
Mm.
either. Like, what is life going to look like? But that mindful media use, is that what we said? Let's
That's
stick
what we
with
said. I think that's the term. That's the term for it. Someone
yeah.
add it to the book.
There we go. And I think not only with time, but I think you hit on a piece like with your own personal experience that I think we can add to that mindful media usage is like what are these feelings that I'm having? Like what are
Mm.
these what is this experience like to me? Because when we're just seeing it scrolling, let's just take a moment to kind of slow down and see what's going on with ourselves. Like, is there tension in my body? Am I starting to think a lot? Is my mind racing? Okay, that's a decent flag. Let's just slow down a little bit. Maybe let's put a timer on how much we're using. Just get a little distance from that. I know that
Right.
doesn't
I think
solve it,
that,
but
yeah, that mindfulness piece is so important because at the same time, like everyone has a different experience and everyone,
right,
might be processing things that are happening in a different way. And, when you take a step back and,
yeah,
I might be mindful and think, okay, I need to get off, but someone else might be like, no, that's not what I need.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's each person, right, is going to experience it differently. It's going to impact them
Right.
differently for sure. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
so I think maybe taking that time, but let's just be honest. I doubt I'm the only person that experiences this, but if I, take away something, I'm going to find something else to try and replace it. So I think one step with that also not only recognizing how long we're on it, but recognizing what we're feeling with it. If it does impact us in a way that we don't want to be impacted, but let's add something that can be maybe more helpful. I mean, add something that could feel a little bit more uplifting or encouraging. This could be anywhere from creating structure in your day, like setting a time. This time, like I want to be on social media. I know it's kind of hard to think about, like having any structured times with social media, but especially if it's encompassing a lot of our time. But creating structure from, okay, I'm going to write, let's be old fashioned. I'm going to write someone a letter during this time or on this day. I'm going to give this person a phone call. I'm going to write an email. I'm going to send a text. I'm kind of doing something to help us feel a little bit more connected. I know I said writing a letter. It takes a while to send and to get back. I recognize that, but even taking the time to write down things kind of helps us externalize as a way to connect with people as well.
Yeah. How about FOMO in the traditional sense of,
Yeah,
the phrase? If things were different and, I had friends that were all meeting out for lunch and I wasn't invited,
yeah,
how would you recommend kind of handling a situation like that in, the traditional phrase?
yeah. Great question. I think the question that comes to my mind is if someone's experiencing that, just recognizing what does it feel like it's saying about myself, if that makes sense. Like, what does this mean about how they view me, how much do they like me, do they like me? A lot of these questions can come like, why wasn't I there? A lot of different kind of layers to that. So I think one of the first things is recognizing what are these feelings that I'm experiencing. Is it anxiety? Is it sadness or anger? And then taking a moment to think like, how come that's there? Like, is it like some of these like negative self beliefs are coming in mind? But taking some time to think about that, to feel those, I think is pretty important. It's pretty important. Taking time also to voice that as well. Someone that's safe, someone that will be able to hear you out. But yeah, just thinking about it in a more traditional sense, just kind of feeling like um, um, what does this mean about our relationship kind of comes to mind, and which is an understandable question. It's an understandable possible stress or anxiety, but taking some time to feel that, investigate that, connect over that.
Right. Yeah. I think even, what does this make me feel like about myself? Like,
Yeah,
not just, the relationship, but like, those
yeah,
insecurities that tend to come up when you're struggling with FOMO, when you're struggling with not having been
yeah,
invited to something.
yeah. And those moments are painful.
Yeah.
Moments are painful. A lot of different feelings and thoughts can come in. You're absolutely right. So taking that time to, and it's hard, but try and take that time to investigate that, feel those out. Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So good. Mindful media usage.
there it is.
Love that.
Yeah,
Amazing. That is so great. And hopefully, the people watching were encouraged by that, because I actually have a lot of friends that have some FOMO. I've gotten a lot of texts in the past from friends being like, "Oh, I wasn't invited to this thing. Like, I feel so bored now, or I feel so sad, or
yeah,
I was grounded and I couldn't do this, when I was younger," and things like that. That I remember getting from friends. And so I know that this is a message and a topic that a lot of people can relate to and understand. And
mhm.
hopefully, this was an encouragement to them.